Harper Blackwood's fingers trembled as she opened the antique jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother. The velvet-lined interior felt oddly spacious, and a cold wave of realization washed over her. The sapphire necklace was gone. Not misplaced, not temporarily borrowed. Gone. This wasn't the first time she had opened her jewelry box to find something missing. Over the past 3 months, several pieces had mysteriously disappeared. Her pearl earrings, the ruby ring from her great-grandmother, and now the sapphire necklace that had been in her family for 4 generations. "Elliot?" she called out, her voice echoing through their sprawling suburban home. She waited for a response, but the house remained silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Her husband of 15 years, Dr. Elliot Blackwood, was likely still at the university where he served as a distinguished professor of economics. While Harper taught literature to high school students, Elliot lectured to graduate students and frequently spoke at prestigious conferences. The disparity in their professional status had never bothered Harper until recently, when Elliot had begun subtly undermining her at social gatherings. "My wife lives in the fantasy world of books," he would say, with a condescending smile whenever she tried to contribute to conversations with his colleagues. "Harper doesn't understand the complexities of university politics," he'd explain when she questioned something, effectively silencing her. Harper closed the jewelry box and took a deep breath. When she confronted Elliot about the missing jewelry 2 months ago, he had looked at her with such genuine concern that she almost felt guilty for accusing him. "Darling, are you sure you didn't misplace them?" he had asked, his brow furrowed. "Remember last year when you thought someone had stolen your camera, and we found it in the guest room closet?" He had placed his hand on her shoulder, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Maybe we should talk to Dr. Fielding again. The forgetfulness could be stress-related." Dr. Fielding was the psychiatrist Elliot had insisted she see after what he called her episodes began. Harper had reluctantly agreed to the appointments, but she knew she wasn't forgetful or unstable. She knew what was in her jewelry box. She knew what was missing. The sound of the garage door opening pulled Harper from her thoughts. She quickly closed the jewelry box and returned it to the dresser. Confronting Elliot without evidence would only lead to another conversation about her mental health. "Harper, are you home?" Elliot's voice carried from downstairs, confident and commanding as always. "Up here," she called back, composing herself. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, steady and deliberate. Elliot appeared in the doorway, his tall frame impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his salt-and-pepper hair perfectly styled. At 45, he still turned heads, and he knew it. He loosened his tie and smiled at her, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "How was your day?" he asked, crossing the room to kiss her cheek. His cologne was different today, more expensive than the one she had given him for Christmas. "Fine," Harper replied, forcing a smile. "The students are preparing for the Shakespeare competition. How was yours?" "Productive," he said, shrugging off his jacket. "The department approved my sabbatical for next semester. 6 months to focus on my book." He paused, studying her face. "Is everything all right? You seem tense." Harper hesitated. Should she mention the sapphire necklace? Last time she brought up the missing jewelry, Elliot had suggested increasing her medication. "Just tired," she said finally. "You should rest," he replied, his tone suggesting it wasn't merely a recommendation. "I have to go back to campus tonight." "Late faculty meeting about the new research grants." Harper nodded, not trusting herself to speak. These late meetings had become increasingly frequent over the past 6 months. After Elliot left for his meeting, Harper sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back at her seemed older than 40, her green eyes dulled by doubt and confusion. When had she started second-guessing herself? When had she begun to believe that maybe she was losing her grip on reality? She opened the bottom drawer of her vanity and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal, her teaching diary, where she recorded observations about her students' progress. But hidden between its pages was a different kind of record, a detailed inventory of her jewelry, complete with photographs she had taken secretly, along with dates when she last saw each piece. This wasn't paranoia. This was evidence. The phone rang, startling her. Harper reached for it, expecting Elliot calling to say he'd be even later. "Hello?" she answered. "Harper, it's Greta. Do you have a minute?" Greta Finley had been Harper's colleague and friend for nearly a decade. At 62, she had the wisdom that came from experience and the sharp perception that came from teaching high school students for over 30 years. "Of course," Harper replied, relieved to hear a friendly voice. "I saw Elliot today," Greta said, her tone careful. "He wasn't at the university." Harper's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "He has classes on Thursdays. I was meeting my niece for lunch downtown at that new restaurant near the jewelry district. Elliot was coming out of Rosenthal's fine jewelry with a young woman. They seemed close." The room began to spin slightly. "Are you sure it was him?" "Positive." I almost called out to him, but then I saw him hand the woman a small package. She opened it right there on the street. It was a pair of earrings. Pearl earrings, Harper. Harper closed her eyes, remembering her grandmother's pearls that had disappeared 3 weeks ago. Did you see what she looked like? Young, maybe late 20s. Long blonde hair. She was wearing a red dress and carrying what looked like research papers. "Harper, I'm so sorry. I thought you should know." After hanging up, Harper sat motionless, her mind racing yet strangely calm. Pieces were falling into place. The late nights, the new cologne, the missing jewelry, and most damning, his insistence that she was becoming unstable and forgetful. She moved to Elliot's home office, a room she rarely entered out of respect for his privacy. Now, respect was the last thing on her mind. She began methodically searching through his desk drawers, not even sure what she was looking for until she found it. A small leather case hidden beneath a stack of academic journals. Inside was a credit card statement for an account she didn't know existed, bearing charges from restaurants she had never visited, hotels in cities Elliot had claimed to be at for conferences, and multiple purchases from jewelry stores across the state. The most recent charge was from Rosenthal's, dated that very afternoon, but it was the handwritten note tucked inside the statement that made her blood run cold. In elegant script, it read, "For my beautiful Zoe, who appreciates true beauty more than anyone ever could, until tomorrow, E." Harper felt something shift inside her, not breaking, but hardening. She had spent 15 years supporting this man, believing in him, doubting herself for him. She had allowed him to isolate her from friends, to make her question her own sanity, and all the while, he had been systematically stealing her family heirlooms to lavish gifts on a woman young enough to be his daughter. She carefully replaced everything exactly as she had found it and returned to her bedroom. Opening her jewelry box once more, she counted the remaining pieces. 3 necklaces, 2 rings, and a bracelet. All that remained of her inheritance. All that remained of her grandmother's legacy. Harper opened her journal and made a new entry, her handwriting steady despite the storm brewing inside her. April 28th, she wrote, "The last day I was a fool." As darkness fell outside, she began to formulate a plan. If Elliot Blackwood thought he knew anything about betrayal, he was about to receive an education. And Harper, after all, was an excellent teacher. She remembered something she often told her students when teaching Macbeth. Shakespeare shows us that revenge is a dish best served with ironic justice. For the first time in months, Harper smiled, a smile that would have alarmed anyone who saw it, especially her husband, because it wasn't a smile of happiness, but of awakening, and awakened women were dangerous indeed. The grandfather clock struck midnight as Harper closed her journal and placed it back in its hiding place. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of Elliot's education in consequences, and Harper intended to be a thorough instructor. The following morning, Harper woke before the alarm, a strange sense of clarity washing over her. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the empty side of the bed, where Elliot should have been. He hadn't come home last night. Another late faculty meeting that had apparently required an overnight stay. She reached for her phone and found a text message sent at 2 in the morning. Working through the night with the research team. Don't wait up tomorrow either. Important breakthrough. I bet, Harper whispered to the empty room, setting her phone down without replying. She had spent half the night researching instead of sleeping, and now she knew exactly what she needed to do. First, she called in sick to school, something she had done only twice in her 15-year teaching career. Preston Garner, the school principal, sounded genuinely concerned. "Are you all right, Harper? You never miss work." "Just feeling a bit under the weather," she replied, infusing her voice with just enough weakness to be convincing. "I might need tomorrow as well. I've emailed detailed lesson plans to the substitute." "Take care of yourself," Preston said. "The students can manage without you for a few days. Your health comes first." Chuff, if only he knew what kind of illness she was truly suffering from. The kind that comes from betrayal so profound, it rewrites your understanding of the past 15 years. After hanging up, Harper dressed with deliberate care, choosing a professional outfit she typically wore for parent-teacher conferences. A navy blue blazer over a cream blouse, paired with tailored slacks. She applied makeup with precision, covering the shadows beneath her eyes that testified to her sleepless night. Looking in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself, not because she looked different, but because she felt different. The woman staring back at her had steel in her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Harper's first stop was Merchants Bank, where she and Elliot had maintained joint accounts since their marriage. The friendly teller greeted her by name. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood. What can we do for you today?" "I need to make some changes to our accounts," Harper said pleasantly. "My husband and I are restructuring our finances." 2 hours later, Harper walked out of the bank having opened a new account in only her name. She had transferred exactly half of their joint savings, no more, no less. She wasn't a thief, unlike her husband. She had also ordered a complete record of all transactions from their joint accounts for the past year. The bank manager had been reluctant until Harper explained that she needed the information for tax planning purposes. It wasn't entirely a lie. Someone would certainly be paying. Her next stop was more difficult. The locksmith studied her driver's license carefully before agreeing to come to the house that afternoon to change the locks. Harper had prepared for questions, but the man simply nodded when she mentioned security concerns and quoted her a price that made her wince. Still, it would be worth every penny. By noon, Harper was sitting in the office of Patricia Winters, a family law attorney recommended by Greta. The lawyer's office was minimalist and precise, much like the woman herself, who listened without interruption as Harper explained her situation. "So, to summarize," Patricia said when Harper finished, "you believe your husband has been gaslighting you about your missing jewelry, which you suspect he's been stealing to give to another woman. You found evidence of an affair and a hidden credit card, and now you want to know your options." "That's correct," Harper confirmed, her voice steadier than she expected. Patricia leaned forward. "Before we proceed, I need to ask, do you have documentation of the missing items? Photographs, appraisals, anything that proves they existed and belong to you?" Harper nodded and removed a folder from her bag, passing it across the desk. "I've photographed every piece since I was 18. These are family heirlooms, passed down through 4 generations. I have the appraisals my mother had done before she gave them to me, and I've kept my own inventory updated annually for insurance purposes." Patricia looked impressed as she flipped through the documents. "And the credit card statements?" "I've made copies," Harper said, indicating another section of the folder. "I put everything back exactly as I found it. He doesn't know that I know." The attorney studied Harper for a moment. "That was smart. What exactly do you want to accomplish here, Mrs. Blackwood?" Harper took a deep breath. "I want a divorce, obviously. But first, I want what's rightfully mine, and I want him to understand exactly what he's done." He paused. "Is that possible? Legally?" Patricia's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "We can certainly secure your financial interests and pursue compensation for the stolen jewelry. As for making him understand, that's not typically within the scope of legal remedies. She closed the folder. But I've found that justice has many forms, and the court of public opinion can be more punishing than any judge. By late afternoon, Harper had returned home to find the locksmith finishing his work. She paid him in cash and pocketed the new keys, feeling a small thrill of satisfaction. The house that Elliot had always treated as his castle now had a new gatekeeper. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. Breakthrough continuing. Staying on campus tonight again. Don't wait up. Harper didn't bother responding. Instead, she called Greta. I need a favor, she said, when her friend answered. And it might require bending some ethical boundaries. After what that man has done to you? Greta replied without hesitation. Consider those boundaries trampled. What do you need? Information about a student named Zoe Winters. She's likely one of Elliot's graduate students. There was a pause before Greta answered. Give me an hour. While waiting for Greta's call, Harper methodically went through their home, photographing everything of value. Elliot's prized possessions were numerous. The vintage Rolex collection he'd been building since graduate school, the rare first-edition economics texts, the expensive artwork he'd acquired to impress the right people. City. Most significant were his beloved vehicles. The Mercedes-Benz sedan he drove daily, the restored 1967 Corvette he only took out on weekends, and the custom motorcycle he'd purchased last year during what Harper now recognized as the beginning of his midlife crisis. Harper had just finished documenting the garage when Greta called back. Zoe Winters, Greta began without preamble. 28 years old, doctoral candidate in economic theory. Her dissertation committee chair is, surprise, surprise, Dr. Elliot Blackwood. She has published 3 papers with him as co-author in the last year. According to departmental gossip, she's brilliant, ambitious, and has a special mentorship relationship with your husband. Special mentorship, Harper repeated flatly. How original. There's more, Greta continued. She's presenting at the Economic Policy Symposium in Chicago next weekend. And guess who else is listed as an attendee? Let me guess. My hard-working husband? Correct. They're staying at the Grand Palmer Hotel, though I'm guessing not in the same room. At least, not officially. Harper felt a cold determination settle over her. Thank you, Greta. This is exactly what I needed. Harper, Greta's voice grew serious. What are you planning to do? Nothing illegal, Harper assured her. Just a lesson in consequences. After hanging up, Harper sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, finalizing her plans. First, she composed an email to Preston Garner, requesting a personal leave of absence for 2 weeks, citing family emergency. Next, she purchased a train ticket to Chicago for the following Thursday, the day before Elliot and his special mentee were scheduled to arrive. Finally, she made 3 phone calls, one to a high-end auction house specializing in watches and vintage cars, one to a real estate appraiser, and one to a private investigator. The PI answered on the second ring. Michaels Investigations. Mr. Michaels, Harper said, I need documentation of an affair. Standard package or premium? He asked, his tone matter-of-fact. Harper thought about the sapphire necklace that had been in her family for generations, now adorning the neck of a woman who had never known her grandmother. Premium, she replied. I want everything. As night fell, Harper opened a bottle of wine, an expensive Cabernet that Elliot had been saving for a special occasion. She poured herself a generous glass and carried it to the back porch, where she sat, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. For the first time in years, she felt truly awake. The numbness that had gradually settled over her during her marriage was receding, replaced by a burning clarity. All those times Elliot had corrected her in public, interrupted her stories, dismissed her opinions. They weren't isolated incidents, but part of a pattern designed to diminish her. She remembered how he'd reacted when she'd mentioned wanting to pursue a master's degree 3 years ago. Why bother? He'd asked. You're already established in your career. Besides, graduate school is demanding. I'm not sure you'd thrive in that environment." His words had stung, but she'd accepted them because she trusted his judgment. He was the successful academic, after all. Now she understood. He hadn't been protecting her from failure. He'd been protecting himself from her success. Harper took another sip of wine, savoring the rich flavor. On Monday, she would contact the graduate program at Northfield State and request an application packet. But first, she had a husband to educate. Her phone chimed with an email notification, the private investigator confirming their arrangement. Harper responded immediately, providing Elliot's schedule and the hotel information for Chicago. As she prepared for bed that night, Harper paused at her jewelry box. She carefully removed the remaining pieces, the ones Elliot hadn't yet stolen, and placed them in a small travel case, which she then locked in the fire-resistant safe hidden in her closet. The safe had been a gift from her mother when Harper first moved into her own apartment after college. "Every woman needs a place that's just hers," Vivian had told her, "a place no one else can access." Her mother's wisdom, like her jewelry, had been passed down through generations of women who understood that security sometimes required secrecy. That night, Harper slept soundly for the first time in months, dreaming of sapphires and pearls and rubies, of treasures lost and found. In her dreams, she was standing in an auction house, watching as bidders competed for a collection labeled "The Price of Betrayal." The final bid came from a woman whose face Harper couldn't quite see, but whose voice sounded strangely like her own. The next 3 days passed in a carefully orchestrated dance of normalcy. Elliot returned home Saturday evening, bringing the scent of unfamiliar perfume and a thin veneer of academic exhaustion with him. Harper greeted him with a convincing smile, asking appropriate questions about his research breakthrough, while serving the dinner she had prepared, his favorite pasta dish, which she'd deliberately oversalted. "How's the pasta?" she asked, watching him struggle not to grimace. "It's fine," he lied, reaching for his water glass. "Maybe a touch too much salt." "Oh? I hadn't noticed," Harper replied, mirroring the gaslighting he had perfected. "Maybe your taste buds are off from all that coffee you've been drinking during your late nights." Elliot gave her a sharp look, but said nothing. Harper maintained her pleasant expression, feeling a small thrill at this minor rebellion. The real satisfaction would come later. On Sunday morning, Harper suggested they have brunch together. "Like we used to," she added, with calculated nostalgia. Elliot agreed, seeming almost relieved that she wasn't questioning his absences. At the restaurant, she steered the conversation toward his upcoming trip to Chicago. "The Economic Policy Symposium, right? Wasn't that the same conference where you presented your paper on investment patterns last year?" "Similar, but more prestigious," Elliot replied, his ego showing through. "This year, I'm moderating the opening panel and presenting new research. It's quite an honor." "I'm sure your graduate students are thrilled to have such opportunities," Harper said mildly, watching his reaction. "Anyone I know presenting with you?" A flicker of unease crossed his face before he composed himself. "Several department members. No one you'd know." Harper murmured, taking a sip of her mimosa. "Perhaps you could bring me back one of those little gift shop snow globes. I've always loved them." "You collect snow globes now?" Elliot asked, with thinly veiled condescension. "Oh, I've been collecting all sorts of things lately," she replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Memories, evidence, perspective." He stared at her, uncertain how to interpret her words, but Harper simply changed the subject to the unseasonably warm weather, leaving him slightly off balance, a feeling he had deliberately cultivated in her for years. Monday morning arrived with a crystalline clarity that matched Harper's state of mind. Elliot left early for the university, kissing her cheek distractedly, while reminding her that he'd be swamped with preparations for his trip. "Don't expect me home before 8 all week," he said, straightening his tie in the hallway mirror. "And don't forget I leave for Chicago on Friday morning." "How could I forget?" Harper replied. It's on our shared calendar, after all. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, Harper's real day began. The auction house representative arrived promptly at 9:30. An elegantly dressed woman named Diana, who surveyed Elliot's car collection with professional interest. The 1967 Corvette is particularly notable, Diana observed, circling the gleaming vehicle. Original paint, matching numbers, immaculate condition. Do you have the provenance documents? Harper handed over the folder she had prepared. Everything's here, including original purchase receipts and maintenance records. Diana nodded approvingly. And you're authorized to sell these vehicles? Harper produced the documentation the attorney had prepared, confirming her legal right to sell jointly owned property. As you can see, all 3 vehicles are titled in both our names. By 11 o'clock, arrangements had been made for all 3 vehicles to be moved to the auction house's secure facility the following day. The Rolex collection would be collected that afternoon. The representative assured Harper that their upcoming luxury auction would feature these items prominently, with expected returns well above market value. Our clientele appreciates quality and exclusivity, Diana explained. These pieces will attract significant interest. After Diana left, Harper drove to campus in her own modest sedan. She had never visited Elliot's office unannounced before, an unspoken boundary in their marriage that had somehow become a rule. Today, she was breaking all the rules. The economics department occupied the 3rd floor of Harrington Hall, a stately brick building near the center of campus. Harper navigated the hallways with purpose, nodding politely to students who passed. Elliot's office was at the end of the main corridor, his name engraved on a polished brass plate beside the heavy wooden door. Harper paused before knocking, listening to the muffled voices from within. One was unmistakably Elliot's, the authoritative tone he used when holding court. The other was female, her laughter musical and young. Taking a deep breath, Harper knocked firmly. The voices immediately fell silent. After a moment, Elliot called out, "Come in!" Harper opened the door to find Elliot seated behind his imposing desk, while a young blonde woman, unmistakably Zoe Winters, perched on the corner of it, research papers scattered between them. Zoe was wearing pearl earrings that Harper recognized instantly. "Harper!" Elliot exclaimed, poorly concealing his shock. "This is unexpected." "Clearly," Harper replied, her gaze fixed on Zoe, who had slipped off the desk to stand beside it. "I thought I'd surprise you with lunch, but I see you're busy with a student." Elliot recovered quickly, shifting into professional mode. "Harper, this is Zoe Winters, one of our most promising doctoral candidates. Zoe, my wife, Harper." Zoe extended her hand, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "It's nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Blackwood. Your husband speaks highly of you." Harper accepted the handshake, noting the sapphire pendant hanging from Zoe's neck, the family heirloom that had disappeared last week. "Does he? How interesting. I can't say he's mentioned you at all." An awkward silence filled the room before Elliot cleared his throat. "Zoe and I were just finalizing our presentation for the Chicago Symposium." "Of course," Harper said pleasantly. "Don't let me interrupt your work. I just wanted to drop this off." She placed a small gift bag on his desk. "A little something for your trip." Confusion flickered across Elliot's face as he reached for the bag. "Thank you. That's thoughtful." "Open it later," Harper suggested. "When you're alone." She turned to Zoe, whose hand had unconsciously risen to touch the sapphire at her throat. "Those are beautiful earrings. Family heirlooms?" Zoe blushed, glancing uncertainly at Elliot. "A gift, actually?" "They look familiar," Harper continued. "Almost identical to a pair my grandmother left me. But those disappeared recently. I must be getting forgetful in my old age." Elliot's face paled slightly. "Harper, I thought we agreed you'd see Dr. Fielding about these memory issues." "Oh, I've been seeing someone much more helpful," Harper assured him with a cryptic smile. "Someone who specializes in clarity and resolution." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Enjoy Chicago, both of you. I hear the Grand Palmer Hotel is lovely this time of year." The look of stunned realization on Elliot's face was worth every penny she would pay the private investigator. Back at home, Harper opened her laptop and began typing an email to her mother, Vivian. They hadn't spoken much since Elliot had convinced Harper that her mother's concerns about him were simply jealousy or overprotectiveness. Now, Harper understood that Vivian had seen through Elliot from the beginning. "Dear Mom," she wrote, "I owe you an apology. You were right about Elliot, and I should have listened. I'm taking steps to correct my mistake, and I'd like to come visit you next week. There's much to discuss." After sending the email, Harper checked her phone to find 3 missed calls from Elliot. She silenced the ringer and set the phone aside. Let him worry for a change. The doorbell rang at precisely 3 o'clock, the auction house representatives arriving to collect the watch collection. Harper led them to Elliot's study, where she unlocked the custom-built display case containing his prized Rolexes. Each watch was carefully documented, photographed, and packed into a specialized transport container. "Your husband has excellent taste," commented the specialist, admiring a particularly rare model. "This collection could fetch well over 100,000 at auction." "He's always been selective about what he values," Harper replied, thinking of how easily he had discarded 15 years of marriage for a younger woman. Unfortunately, his judgment isn't always sound. By 6 o'clock, the house felt strangely empty. The watches were gone, the garage spaces where Elliot's beloved vehicles had been parked now vacant. Harper moved through the rooms with a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in years. She was reclaiming her space, piece by piece. Her phone buzzed again. Elliot, for the 8th time. Finally, she answered. "Where the hell have you been?" he demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "And what was that performance in my office today?" "Performance?" Harper repeated calmly. "I don't know what you mean. I simply came to bring you a gift and meet your promising student." "You know exactly what you were doing," Elliot hissed, making insinuations about Zoe's earrings, mentioning the hotel. "Oh? Did I say something incorrect?" Harper interrupted. "Are you not staying at the Grand Palmer? I must have misread the confirmation email that was sent to our shared account." There was a long silence before Elliot spoke again, his tone shifting to the pacifying one he used when trying to manage her. "Harper, I think you're jumping to conclusions based on incomplete information. Why don't we talk about this calmly when I get home?" "That sounds reasonable," Harper agreed. "When will you be home?" "I'm leaving campus now. We can have dinner and discuss this like adults." "Like adults," Harper echoed. "Yes, I'd like that." After hanging up, Harper moved swiftly through the house, gathering the last items she needed. In the small gift bag she'd given Elliot earlier was a hotel key card, not to the Grand Palmer, but to the boutique hotel across the street, where she had reserved a room with an excellent view of the Palmer's main entrance. The private investigator would be stationed there starting Friday morning, documenting every move Elliot and Zoe made. Harper heard Elliot's key in the front door lock, or rather, she heard him trying his key in the new lock she had installed. After several frustrated attempts, the doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Elliot stood on the porch, confusion and anger battling for dominance on his face. "Why is my key not working?" "Security concerns," Harper replied, stepping aside to let him enter. "Please, come in. We have much to discuss." He stormed past her into the house, then stopped abruptly in the living room. "Where are my first edition books?" "Safe," Harper assured him, "as are your watches and cars." Elliot turned slowly to face her, comprehension dawning. "What have you done?" "Nothing compared to what you've done," Harper replied, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "But unlike your actions, mine are completely legal. Would you like to see the documentation?" She gestured to the dining room table, where she had arranged copies of all the relevant paperwork, joint property agreements, auction consignment forms, bank statements showing transfers to their joint account, and finally, displayed prominently in the center, photographs of Zoe wearing Harper's missing jewelry. Elliot's face drained of color as he scanned the documents. You had no right. I had every right, Harper interrupted. Just as you had every right to sell my family heirlooms to buy trinkets for your graduate student? Or did you think I wouldn't notice? This is insane, he sputtered. You've lost your mind. Harper laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised even her. That's been your strategy all along, hasn't it? Make me doubt myself enough that I'd never question you. Gaslight me into thinking I was forgetful, unstable, imagining things. She shook her head. It almost worked. I don't know what you're talking about, Elliot insisted, but his eyes darted to the photographs on the table. Don't worry, Harper said, her voice softer now. Everything of yours that I've sold or consigned for auction will be properly credited to our joint account. I've taken nothing that wasn't legally mine to take. She paused. Unlike you. Elliot's anger returned, his face flushing. This is about the jewelry? For God's sake, Harper? They were just gathering dust in that old box. The casual dismissal of her family treasures hit Harper like a physical blow. Just gathering dust, she repeated. Like our marriage? Something to be discarded when something shinier came along? He had no answer for that. Instead, he reached for his phone. I'm calling my attorney. Excellent idea, Harper agreed. I'm sure Patricia Winters would appreciate the chance to speak with your legal representation directly. It might streamline the divorce proceedings. Elliot froze, his finger hovering over the screen. Divorce? Harper, you're overreacting. This is all a misunderstanding. Is it? He picked up one of the photographs. Zoe wearing the sapphire necklace at what appeared to be an intimate dinner. Tell me, when you gave her my grandmother's necklace, did you tell her where it came from? Or did you let her believe you purchased it for her? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, Harper said quietly. The reservation at Marcello's tonight is under your name. I assumed you'd be taking Zoe there to celebrate before your big trip. Elliot's expression confirmed her suspicion. Harper felt a strange sense of calm as the last pieces fell into place. I've left some clothes in the guest room for you, she told him. You can stay there tonight while you make other arrangements. The locks have been changed, and I expect you to be gone by tomorrow afternoon. This is my house, too, Elliot protested. Yes, and you're welcome to buy out my half, Harper replied. The real estate appraisal is included in that stack of papers. Patricia will be in touch about the rest. She turned to leave the room, then paused. One more thing. I'd checked that gift I gave you earlier. It contains something you'll need for Chicago. Alone in her bedroom, Harper finally allowed herself to cry. Not from sadness or even anger, but from relief. The weight of doubting herself, of questioning her own perception, had been lifted. The truth, painful as it was, felt cleaner than the web of lies she had been living in. Her phone chimed with an incoming email. Her mother, responding immediately to her message. My darling girl, I've been waiting for this day. Your room is ready whenever you arrive. I'm so proud of you. Harper smiled through her tears, feeling a sense of hope she had almost forgotten. Tomorrow, she would wake up in a house free of Elliot's presence. Next week, she would be with her mother, reconnecting with the woman who had tried to warn her 15 years ago. And someday soon, she would be whole again, not despite this betrayal, but because of how she had risen to meet it. Outside, she heard Elliot's angry footsteps as he stormed to the guest room, followed by the slam of the door. In his gift bag, he would find a single item, a bicycle key, attached to a note that read, For your journey forward, the bike is in the garage. The cool morning air filled Harper's lungs as she jogged through the neighborhood at dawn, the rhythmic pounding of her feet against the pavement providing a steady backbeat to her tumultuous thoughts. She had started running again 3 days ago, an activity Elliot had subtly discouraged over the years, with comments about her not having a runner's build and concerns about her damaging her knees. Now, with each stride, she reclaimed another small piece of herself. When she returned home, sweaty but energized, the house was quiet. Elliot's temporary residence in the guest room had lasted exactly one night before he had packed a suitcase and left without a word. According to the text he'd sent later, he was staying with a colleague until his Chicago trip. Harper didn't bother responding. She knew exactly which colleague had taken him in. She showered and dressed, choosing an outfit she would never have worn during her marriage, fitted jeans and a vibrant emerald blouse that complemented her eyes. For years, Elliot had steered her toward muted colors and conservative styles, claiming they were more appropriate for a professor's wife. The emerald blouse had sat unworn in her closet, tags still attached, since her mother had given it to her last Christmas. At precisely 9 o'clock, Harper's phone rang. Diana from the auction house. "Mrs. Blackwood, I have some excellent news," Diana began. "We've had an unusual development regarding your husband's vehicles. A private collector viewed them yesterday and has made a preemptive offer for the entire collection, including the motorcycle and watches." Harper sat down at the kitchen table. "What kind of offer?" "Substantially above our high estimate," Diana replied, naming a figure that momentarily took Harper's breath away. "The collector specializes in curated collections with provenance, and is particularly interested in the story behind these pieces." "The story?" Harper asked carefully. "Yes. Apparently, word has circulated about a professor's vehicles being sold by his wife after he, well, the collector used the phrase, monumentally screwed up. I hope you don't mind that the circumstances have become somewhat known in collecting circles." A small smile played at Harper's lips. "Not at all. In fact, I think my husband would appreciate that his collection is being recognized for its true value." After concluding the call and accepting the offer, Harper sat quietly for several minutes, contemplating the substantial sum that would soon be deposited into the account she had set up. Half would go to Elliot eventually, as part of their divorce settlement, but the other half, her half, represented freedom and possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to imagine in years. Her phone chimed with a text from the private investigator. "Subject checked in at Grand Palmer Hotel, Chicago, 10:32 a.m., alone. Female subject expected to arrive separately this afternoon. Surveillance continues as planned." Harper replied with a simple, "Thank you," and set her phone aside. Everything was proceeding according to plan. She had one more critical task to complete today: retrieving her remaining jewelry from the safe and visiting her attorney for the next phase of her strategy. As she gathered her things to leave, Harper noticed the light blinking on their home answering machine, a relic from an earlier time that Elliot had insisted they maintain for emergencies. She pressed play, surprised to hear a vaguely familiar voice. "Dr. Blackwood, this is Chairperson Reynolds from the Ethics Committee. I've been trying to reach you on your cell phone without success. It's imperative that we speak before your departure for Chicago. Please call my office immediately regarding the matter we discussed yesterday." Harper stared at the machine, her mind racing. Ethics Committee? What had Elliot done to attract their attention? She made a mental note to mention this to Patricia during their meeting. It could be relevant to their case. The law offices of Winters and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a sleek downtown building. Patricia greeted Harper with a firm handshake, before leading her to a conference room where several folders were arranged neatly on the polished table. "I've been reviewing your case," Patricia began without preamble. "The documentation you've provided is comprehensive, but we need to discuss strategy moving forward. Your husband has retained counsel. Jameson from the firm of Becker and Jameson contacted me yesterday." Harper nodded, unsurprised. "Has Elliot made any specific demands?" "Mainly bluster at this point," Patricia replied with a slight smile. "Threats about your unauthorized sale of his property, demands for immediate return of his vehicles and watches. I informed him that all sales were of jointly owned property, with proceeds being properly accounted for and documented." "How did he respond to that?" "By changing tactics. He's now claiming psychological distress and impaired judgment on your part." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Apparently, you've been increasingly unstable, and possibly suffering from paranoid delusions." A cold wave washed over Harper. He's still trying to make me seem crazy. Exactly, Patricia agreed, which is why today's task is so important. I've arranged for an independent psychological evaluation with Dr. Eleanor Simmons, one of the most respected forensic psychiatrists in the state. Her assessment will effectively counter any claims about your mental state. Harper spent the next 2 hours with Dr. Simmons, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. The evaluation was thorough but not invasive, covering Harper's personal history, her marriage to Elliot, and the events of the past several months. Mrs. Blackwood, Dr. Simmons said as they concluded, based on our conversation and the documentation you've provided, I see no evidence of delusional thinking or psychological impairment. Quite the contrary. You've responded to a difficult situation with remarkable clarity and strategic thinking. Thank you, Harper replied, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. It means a lot to hear that from a professional. I'll be submitting my formal report to Attorney Winters tomorrow, Dr. Simmons continued, but I wanted you to know my assessment personally. What you've experienced, having your perceptions consistently denied and being made to question your own sanity, is a textbook case of gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation that can cause significant harm. Harper nodded, a lump forming in her throat. For a while, I really did think I was losing my mind. That's precisely the intended effect, Dr. Simmons said gently. The fact that you found the strength to trust your own perceptions despite this manipulation speaks to your resilience. Later that afternoon, Harper met again with Patricia to review the preliminary divorce filing and discuss next steps. The psychological evaluation will be extremely helpful, Patricia noted, adding Dr. Simmons's preliminary notes to Harper's file. Now, about the jewelry. Have you brought the documentation we discussed? Harper opened her bag and removed a thick folder containing photographs, appraisals, and family records relating to the missing pieces. Everything's here, including the most recent photographs of the items being worn by Zoe Winters. Patricia examined the photographs carefully. These are excellent quality. Combined with the inventory and appraisals, we have solid documentation of both the existence of these pieces and their approximate value. She looked up at Harper. The private investigator's evidence from Chicago will be the final piece we need. He's already confirmed they're both there, Harper said, showing Patricia the text message. Staying in separate rooms but arriving together. Perfect, Patricia replied. Now, there's something else we need to discuss. The message from the ethics committee that you mentioned. I've done some preliminary research, and it appears there's an ongoing investigation into possible academic impropriety involving your husband. Harper leaned forward. What kind of impropriety? The details aren't public, but my sources suggest it involves a relationship with a student and questions about authorship of published papers. Patricia's expression was grave. If these allegations are substantiated, your husband could face serious professional consequences beyond the divorce. Harper sat back, processing this new information. Zoe is listed as co-author on several of Elliot's recent publications. Do you think that he might have been taking credit for her work while offering her special mentorship in return? It's certainly possible. Patricia made a note in her file. This could be significant leverage for our case, particularly if the university decides to pursue sanctions. As Harper left the law office, her phone rang, an unknown Chicago number. She answered cautiously. Mrs. Blackwood? A male voice asked. This is James Michaels, the investigator you hired. I thought you'd want to know right away. The subjects have arrived at the restaurant you specified. I've obtained clear photographs of them together, including intimate moments. Harper closed her eyes briefly. Despite everything, despite the evidence she'd already seen, hearing this confirmation still hurt. Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Please continue as planned. There's something else you should know, he continued. The female subject is wearing what appears to be a ruby ring matching the description you provided. Distinctive setting with small diamonds surrounding the center stone. Harper's grip tightened on her phone. The ruby ring had been her great-grandmother's engagement ring. the most valuable and significant piece in her collection. "Can you get clear photographs of the ring?" "Already done," he assured her. "I'll send everything to you and your attorney by tomorrow morning." That evening, Harper sat alone in her garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in vivid oranges and purples. She had always loved this time of day, the transition between daylight and darkness, when anything seemed possible. Tonight, the beauty brought tears to her eyes, not from sadness, but from the realization that she was seeing the world clearly again for the first time in years. Her phone chimed with an email notification from the auction house. The sale had been completed, the funds transferred. Another message followed immediately after, from her mother, confirming that Harper's room was ready and that Vivian was counting the hours until her arrival. Harper wiped her eyes and stood up, breathing in the sweet scent of the flowering jasmine she had planted against Elliot's objections. "It's too aggressive. It'll take over the entire garden." The plant had thrived despite his predictions, its delicate white flowers now covering the entire trellis. Back inside, Harper opened her laptop and navigated to the website for Northfield State's graduate program in literature. The application deadline for the fall semester was still 3 weeks away. Plenty of time. As she began filling out the online form, another email arrived, this one from Preston Garner, the school principal. "Harper," it read, "I hope your family emergency is resolving. The students miss you terribly. Marcus asked today when Mrs. B would return to help with his college application essay, and the Shakespeare competition group is in shambles without your guidance. Take all the time you need, but know that you're irreplaceable here. Your impact on these young people is profound." Harper read the email twice, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. For years, Elliot had subtly devalued her work, implying that teaching high school literature was somehow less significant than his university position. Yet here was evidence that she was making a genuine difference in young lives, something Elliot, for all his academic prestige, could not claim. She replied to Preston, thanking him for his kind words and confirming that she would return in time for the Shakespeare competition. Then she resumed her graduate school application with renewed purpose. Around midnight, Harper's phone rang. Elliot, calling from Chicago. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. "Harper," he began, his voice that practiced blend of concern and authority. "This has gone far enough. I've spoken with Dr. Fielding, and he agrees that your behavior indicates a serious episode. The sales, the accusations, the private investigator following me. Yes, I know about him. This isn't like you, and I'm worried. When I return from Chicago, we need to discuss getting you proper help. In the meantime, I've asked my attorney to pause any divorce proceedings until we can assess your mental state properly." Harper deleted the message without a second thought. The old Harper might have doubted herself, might have wondered if Elliot was right about her stability. But that Harper was gone, replaced by a woman who trusted her own perceptions and who had the documentation to prove she wasn't imagining things. She opened her journal and made a new entry. April 31st. The day I stopped listening to lies. Outside, a spring thunderstorm was building, lightning illuminating the darkened garden in brief, brilliant flashes. Harper watched the approaching storm without fear, feeling strangely aligned with its power. For too long, she had suppressed her own thunder, contained her lightning. Now, like the storm, she was unleashing her full force, and Elliot had no idea what was about to hit him. Her phone chimed with another message from the investigator, a photograph showing Elliot and Zoe entering the hotel together, his hand possessively at the small of her back, her left hand clearly visible with Harper's ruby ring glinting on her finger. Harper saved the image to the growing file of evidence, then closed her laptop. Tomorrow would be another day of reclamation. Tonight, she would sleep peacefully to the sound of rain, secure in the knowledge that justice, like lightning, was about to strike. Dawn broke over the city skyline as Harper stood at the window of her Chicago hotel room, watching the first golden rays illuminate the Grand Palmer Hotel across the street. She hadn't slept much. Anticipation had kept her awake, rehearsing what she would say when the moment finally arrived. Today was the culmination of her carefully orchestrated plan, the day when all the pieces would finally come together. Her phone buzzed with a text from James Michaels. Subjects still in room 1542. Breakfast ordered to room at 7:15 a.m. Presentation scheduled for 10 a.m. in the Lakeside Ballroom. "Thank you," Harper replied. "I'll take it from here." She dressed with deliberate care, choosing a tailored navy dress that projected both confidence and professionalism. Around her neck, she placed a simple gold chain, the only piece of jewelry that had no connection to Elliot or her past. This necklace she had purchased for herself yesterday, a symbol of her new beginning. At precisely 9:30, Harper crossed the street and entered the Grand Palmer Hotel. The lobby was bustling with conference attendees, name badges identifying them as participants in the Economic Policy Symposium. She spotted several of Elliot's colleagues, but moved smoothly through the crowd without being recognized, an advantage of having been kept separate from his professional life for so long. The Lakeside Ballroom was already filling with economists and academics. A table at the front displayed Elliot's name alongside those of the other panelists, including Zoe Winters. Harper chose a seat in the middle of the room, close enough to be seen but not immediately noticeable. At 9:55, Elliot entered from a side door, immaculately dressed in his presentation suit, projecting the confidence of a man accustomed to commanding attention. Zoe followed a minute later, taking her seat beside him at the panelists' table. On her left hand, the ruby ring caught the light, its deep red stones like drops of blood against her pale skin. The panel moderator approached the podium and began introducing the participants. When he announced Dr. Elliot Blackwood, whose groundbreaking work on adaptive economic models has revolutionized the field, Harper watched her husband's practiced smile of humble acknowledgement, an expression she had seen countless times at department dinners and academic functions. As the moderator continued, Harper discreetly checked her phone. A new email had arrived from Patricia Winters with the subject line, "Urgent Green Light." Attached were scanned copies of official documents from the university's ethics committee, confirming what they had suspected. Elliot was under investigation for academic misconduct and inappropriate relations with a graduate student. The committee had received compelling evidence that multiple papers published under his name contained substantial unattributed work by Zoe Winters, offered in exchange for academic advancement and personal gifts. Harper's heart raced as she read the final line. "The committee recommends immediate suspension pending full investigation." She looked up to see Elliot approaching the podium, adjusting the microphone with the casual confidence of someone who believed himself untouchable. Beside him, Zoe beamed with pride, her hand occasionally rising to touch the sapphire necklace at her throat, another of Harper's family heirlooms. "Distinguished colleagues," Elliot began, his voice carrying through the ballroom, "today I'm honored to present our latest research on the intersection of behavioral economics and policy implementation. As you'll see in our data," Harper stood quietly and made her way to the side of the room, where a conference organizer was checking the presentation schedule. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I have urgent information for Dr. Blackwood that can't wait until after his presentation." The organizer looked uncertain. "We don't usually interrupt speakers." "It's regarding the Ethics Committee investigation," Harper clarified, showing him the email on her phone. His department chair insisted he be informed immediately. The man's eyes widened as he scanned the email. "I see. Of course." He approached the podium and whispered something to Elliot, whose expression shifted from annoyance to concern. Elliot excused himself momentarily from the presentation, asking Zoe to continue reviewing the methodology while he addressed an administrative matter. As Elliot stepped away from the podium, Harper moved forward to meet him at the edge of the stage. "Harper," he hissed, his face a mask of controlled fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Returning something that belongs to me," she replied calmly, holding out a small velvet box. Confusion replaced anger as he took the box and opened it. Inside was a simple silver key. "What is this?" he demanded. "The key to your new apartment," Harper explained. "I took the liberty of renting you a modest one-bedroom near campus. Your personal effects have been moved there, minus the items that have been sold, of course." Elliot's face paled. "You had no right." "I had every right," Harper interrupted, her voice low but firm. "Just as the Ethics Committee had every right to launch an investigation into your relationship with Zoe and the authorship of your recent publications." She handed him a copy of the email. "They've recommended immediate suspension, pending full investigation. Your department chair will be calling any minute." Elliot scanned the document, his hands beginning to shake. "This is a mistake. I can explain." "The way you explained away my missing jewelry?" Harper asked. "Or the way you explained my memory issues to our friends and family? Your explanations won't work anymore, Elliot. Not with me, not with the university, and not with the colleagues watching you right now." Indeed, several conference attendees had noticed the intense conversation and were watching with undisguised interest. "Additionally," Harper continued, "my attorney will be serving you with divorce papers this afternoon, including detailed documentation of the jewelry you stole from me to give to your graduate student." She glanced toward the podium where Zoe was awkwardly attempting to continue the presentation. "I wonder how she'll feel when she learns those weren't gifts you purchased, but family heirlooms you stole from your wife." Elliot's phone began vibrating in his pocket. He pulled it out, staring at the screen in disbelief. "The department chair," he whispered. "You should answer that," Harper suggested. "It seems your carefully constructed life is calling." As Elliot stepped away to take the call, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Harper turned her attention to Zoe, who was watching the exchange with growing concern from the podium. Their eyes met across the room, and Harper held the gaze until Zoe looked away first, her hand unconsciously moving to touch the ruby ring, a nervous habit Harper recognized because she had done the same thing herself for years when the ring had been hers. Elliot returned, his face ashen. "They've suspended me," he said hollowly. "Effective immediately. I'm banned from campus pending the investigation." "How unfortunate," Harper replied without sympathy. "It seems you'll have plenty of time to help Zoe prepare her defense. After all, she's implicated too." A flash of something, perhaps genuine emotion, crossed Elliot's face. "Harper, please, everything I've worked for is exactly what you risked when you decided to steal from me, lie to me, and manipulate me into thinking I was losing my mind." Harper finished for him. "Actions have consequences, Elliot. It's time you learned that lesson." She turned to leave, then paused. "The key is to a month-to-month rental. I paid for 3 months. After that, you're on your own. Your new bicycle is locked outside your building. Here's the combination." She handed him a slip of paper. "A bicycle?" Elliot repeated incredulously. "What am I supposed to do with a bicycle?" Harper smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Whatever you want, Elliot. That's the beauty of consequences. They're yours to deal with. Pedal after Zoe. Pedal away from your mistakes. Or pedal toward a better version of yourself. I really don't care anymore." With that, she walked away, feeling lighter with every step. Behind her, she heard the commotion as Elliot returned to the podium, whispering urgently to Zoe, whose expression transformed from confusion to horror as she realized what was happening. Harper didn't look back. She had seen enough. 3 weeks later, Harper sat in her mother's sunlit garden, a letter in her hands. The Northfield State University letterhead gleamed in the bright morning light. The words, "Acceptance to the Master's Program in Literature," visible at the top. "Congratulations, sweetheart," Vivian exclaimed, squeezing her daughter's shoulders. "I knew you could do it." "Thanks, Mom," Harper replied, still staring at the letter in disbelief. "I keep thinking this is all happening too fast. The divorce proceedings, the university investigation, now graduate school. It's not too fast," Vivian assured her. It's exactly the right speed for you. You've been moving in slow motion for 15 years. Harper laughed, recognizing the truth in her mother's words. Since leaving Elliot, everything in her life seemed to be accelerating toward something better. Her attorney had secured an expedited divorce process based on the overwhelming evidence of Elliot's misconduct, both personal and professional. The university investigation had expanded to include multiple publications, threatening not just his job, but his academic reputation. And most satisfying of all, Harper had received a package yesterday containing her grandmother's pearl earrings, the sapphire necklace, and the ruby ring, all returned by a tearful Zoe after learning their true provenance. "Have you decided about the house?" Vivian asked, pouring them each another cup of coffee. Harper nodded. "I'm selling it. Too many memories, and honestly, I never loved it. Elliot chose it because it was in the right neighborhood for an up-and-coming professor." He smiled. "I found a small cottage near campus, with a garden twice the size of the one at the house. The Jasmine will have room to really spread out." "And what about the money from selling his collections?" Vivian asked. Patricia mentioned the final amount was substantial. "It was," Harper confirmed. "After dividing it as part of the settlement, my half is going into a trust. Some for graduate school, some for retirement, and the rest." He paused, a smile spreading across her face. "I'm establishing a scholarship for high school literature students. Preston helped me set it up. We're calling it the Thornton Family Women's Scholarship, after you and Grandma and Great-Grandma." Tears filled Vivian's eyes. "They would be so proud of you, Harper. Not just for the scholarship, but for finding your strength again." "It was always there," Harper replied softly. "I just forgot how to access it." Her phone buzzed with a text from Preston Garner. "Students just performed Hamlet scene. Standing ovation. When do you return to change lives again?" Harper smiled as she typed her response. "Monday morning, first period. Ready to begin Act 2. That evening, as the sun set over Vivian's garden, Harper and her mother sat side by side on the porch swing, listening to the cicadas begin their nightly chorus. The air was sweet, with the scent of honeysuckle and new possibilities. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Harper said after a comfortable silence. "What's that, dear?" "That day in my jewelry box, when I discovered the sapphire necklace was missing. If I hadn't looked for it then, if I had continued to believe Elliot's lies about my memory—" She shook her head. "One moment of clarity changed everything." Vivian patted her daughter's hand. "That's how life works, sweetheart. We sleepwalk through so much of it, accepting what we're told about ourselves, doubting our own perceptions. Then something wakes us up, and suddenly we see everything differently." Harper nodded, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. "I used to think revenge would feel triumphant or vindicating, but it doesn't, not really." "No?" Vivian asked. "No," Harper confirmed. "It feels like freedom, like setting down a weight I didn't even know I was carrying." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Opening it, she removed a simple gold ring inscribed with a single word: "Truth." "I bought this for myself," she explained, slipping it onto her right hand. "Not as a replacement for what was stolen, but as a reminder of what I found." "And what was that?" Vivian asked, though her eyes suggested she already knew the answer. Harper looked at the ring gleaming in the last light of day, then up at the emerging stars. Constance in an ever-changing universe. "Myself," she answered simply. "I found myself." Miles away, in a modest apartment with bare walls and minimal furniture, Elliot Blackwood stared at his laptop screen, reading the email that had just arrived from the university. Final determination of ethics investigation. His academic career was over. His reputation was in tatters. His carefully constructed life had collapsed like a house of cards. Outside his window, a bicycle leaned against the building, untouched, unused. Beside it, a small moving truck was being loaded with Zoe's belongings as she prepared to transfer to another university, another city, another life far from his toxic influence. Elliot closed his laptop and moved to the window, watching as Zoe climbed into the passenger seat of the truck without a backward glance at his building. On her fingers, no rings gleamed. Harper's heirlooms had been returned to their rightful owner, along with the last vestiges of Elliot's control. As the truck pulled away, Elliot felt an unfamiliar sensation. Not anger or resentment, but recognition. For the first time, he was seeing the consequences of his actions clearly, without the protective filter of justification he had always employed. He had lost everything because of choices he had made, bridges he had burned, people he had harmed. He turned from the window and looked around the sparse apartment, his new reality. On the small dining table lay a single envelope containing divorce papers awaiting his signature. Beside them, a recent issue of the local newspaper featured a small article about a newly established scholarship for literature students, founded by Harper Blackwood with proceeds from a personal collection. Elliot picked up the pen beside the divorce papers. His hand was steady as he signed his name, acknowledging the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. Whatever came next, he would face it without the wealth, status, or reputation he had once wielded like weapons. Just a man with a bicycle, and the belated understanding that some things, once broken, could never be repaired. But some things, like Harper Blackwood, could not only be repaired, but reborn, stronger, wiser, and incandescent with the light of her own truth. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.